Senate Republican leaders are asking Republican and Democratic colleagues to quickly approve a bill that would end the federal government shutdown. A bipartisan group of senators came to agreement last night, but there are several steps to ending the record shutdown, now 41 days and counting. Fox 4's Sean Rabb has more.
The vote to pass the short-term funding bill came Sunday by a 60-40 margin. The government shutdown proposed spending bill funds the government to the end of January and fully funds SNAP through September 2026, but does not include any extension of health care subsidies to help Americans with insurance under the Affordable Care Act pay those premiums. 7 Democrats and 1 independent voted with the Republican majority to get to the 60 votes needed for the measure to move forward.
We applaud the 7 Senate Democrats and 1 independent senator who did the right thing. They decided to put principle over their personal politics. And my urgent plea of all my colleagues in the House, and that means every Democrat in the House, is to think carefully, pray, and finally do the right thing and help us to bring an end to the pain of the American people.
But House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries says the majority of Senate Democrats under Chuck Schumer did the right thing, voting no to fund the government. And he says the battle will continue when House Democrats return to Washington.
We're not going to support a partisan Republican spending bill that continues to gut the health care of the American people. And we're going to continue the fight to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. And if it doesn't happen this week, next week, this month, next month, then it's the fault of Donald Trump, House and Senate Republicans.
Jeffrey said the 8 who voted with Senate Republicans will have to explain their actions to their constituents and the American people. But many Democrats openly criticize their fellow party members, calling their decision to vote with Republicans betrayal and pathetic.
We have support from enough Democrats.
Monday, President Donald Trump urging air traffic controllers to return to work immediately and vowing to open the government quickly. We'll see. Sean Rabb, Fox 4 News.
Many states remain in limbo as the Trump administration goes back and forth with the courts over the release of SNAP benefits for 42 million Americans. A federal appeals court ordered the Trump administration to pay the SNAP benefits in full. Then the Supreme Court temporarily paused that order. Some states already paid the benefits in full and are concerned they may not get reimbursed. Other states are providing partial benefits.
It makes it impossible to be able to plan for how the family is going to be able to get through that day, that week, the next month, because they don't know when that funding is going to be coming in.
A Dallas church is doing what it can to help federal workers in its congregation. And coming up at 4:30, we're going to talk with some of the furloughed workers on the receiving end of those donations about what this means for them. There's also confusion today about President Trump's pledge to give Americans dividend checks from tariff revenue. It would be a $2,000 direct payment to most Americans. But the president's Treasury Secretary has different ideas. Fox's Madeline Rivera has details.
President Trump is doubling down on his sweeping tariffs as the Supreme Court weighs whether they were legally imposed. On Sunday, he once again proposed giving Americans at least $2,000 from tariff revenue, writing on Truth Social, quote, "People that are against tariffs are fools. We are now the richest, most respected country in the world with almost no inflation and a record stock market price." The president says everyone except for high-income people would be eligible for the checks. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has said the priority will be paying down the national debt, adding the stimulus could come in several forms.
It could be just the tax decreases that we are seeing on the president's agenda. You know, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, deductibility of auto loans.
It comes days after the White House defended President Trump's use of an emergency powers law to impose global tariffs before the Supreme Court. But the justices appeared skeptical.
The Congress has the authority to impose taxes. In fact, 250 years ago in Massachusetts, in Lexington and Concord, a revolution began. No taxation without representation.
If the court rules against the president, the Trump administration could be forced to return billions of dollars in revenue.
They've never had to do something where they've refunded all the tariffs over a whole year in the amounts that we're talking about. That could be chaotic.
Congressional approval would likely be required before tariff revenue checks could be distributed to Americans. In Washington, Mather Rivera, Fox 4 News.
Wall Street started the week high on positive progress towards an end to the government shutdown. The shutdown has heavily impacted consumer sentiment and blocked the release of some crucial financial data. Investors are hoping an end to the shutdown could see a turnaround. The Supreme Court rejected an appeal to overturn its landmark ruling legalizing same-sex marriage. Former Kentucky County Clerk Kim Davis wanted the nation's high court to overturn the ruling against her. A lower court order required her to pay hundreds of thousands in damages after she denied a marriage license in the wake of the Supreme Court's ruling. Her lawyer's argument included words from sitting Justice Clarence Thomas, the sole justice who's called for erasing the same-sex marriage ruling. The High Court turned her argument away and made no comment. President Trump hosted Syrian President Ahmad al-Shara in a historic meeting at the White House today. It was the first time a Syrian leader visited the White House since rebels ousted dictator Bashar al-Assad late last year. The meeting comes as the United States lifted decades of sanctions against the country and invited it to a coalition of nations fighting ISIS. Al-Shara led the rebellion that replaced al-Assad's regime. President Trump pardoned a long list of his political allies for their involvement in the attempt to overturn the 2020 election results. 77 names were on the list from the Department of Justice, including the president's former personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, his former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, and attorneys Sidney Powell and John Eastman. These only apply to federal charges, not the state charges against them.